You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. It's good to be back after our holiday week off. You are listening to us on CBS Radio, WJFK 1580 AM, or you've been visiting us at WMCLive.com for this and for any of our previous episodes. Look for WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, and you can now stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast worldwide, anytime, at iTunes. We have terrific guests this week. Estelle Freedman wrote the book we really needed on redefining rape. Regina K. Scully will let us in on why and how she makes so many progressive leaps forward possible. Last, in a two-part segment, our own Gloria Steinem confides what it's really like to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. Articles crop up regularly about Obama being, well, disdainful. It's another way of saying elitist or intellectual, or criticizing him for implying by expression or non-expression that some tasks are beneath him or beneath the dignity of the president. I must confess that I couldn't agree with him more. It must really be ridiculous to be pardoning a turkey when you know that there are quite a few people languishing on death row. But then I thought, well, what if we let our lower selves loose and we just once in a while behaved like the other side does? Now, of course, I realize we never would because we're so much better than the other side. We're above all that. We don't want to descend to their level. But just what if once in a while we adopted their kind of tactics? For example, what if Obama had, at the beginning of pushing the Affordable Care Act, gone into the Rose Garden and stood at the podium and announced that he'd had a dream, which was really a visitation from God, and that God had told him, the American people deserve health care, you must get it for them. Now that would have really thrown a monkey wrench into their plans and into their assault. And then I thought, what if we were to spread the, I wouldn't say rumor, but idea, notion, concept, the English language is rich in these words, that the reason that the Obamacare website was such a mess was not because of ineptitude of the government, but in fact it had been hacked, it had been meddled with, it had been messed up by the other side, funded by, I don't know, the Koch brothers. Now, I have to tell you, this is not so unrealistic as it may seem, nor is it just adopting the paranoia of the other side. Black helicopters are coming. When Watergate first broke and the plumbers, we didn't believe it. It was just too, there we go, surreal. So what if this were actually true? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what if it were true? But whether it's true or not, it just is an interesting story to pass along to friends, sort of as a question. What if the website was hacked and meddled with, and that's the reason it didn't work? And then I began to think of lots and lots and lots of other possibilities. You'll think of them too. Just saying. And now it's time for our first guest. A fate worse than death. That's what they used to call rape. And in fact, sexual assault has been redefined again and again down through history. It's all very political. And that is the subject of a book by Estelle Freedman, who is a professor of U.S. history at Stanford and the guest coming up. Welcome, Estelle, to Women's Media Center Live. It's good to have you with us.
It's a pleasure to talk with you.
It's called Redefining Rape, Sexual Violence in the Era of Suffrage and Segregation. And it is the book that fills the gap in our knowledge as to why there is so much agony and misinterpretation and mishearing around the issue of rape. How did you come to write this tome?
In truth, I've wanted to write about the history of sexual violence through most of my career as a historian, really since I read Susan Brownmiller's book in 1975, and wanted, at the time I was becoming a historian of women and beginning to teach women's history, and later wrote about the history of sexuality, and realized that professional historians were just beginning to do the research, really in the 80s and the 90s. I had trouble, though, writing a book about the experience of rape, and the way that I was finally, at this late stage in my career, able to get to the topic was to write about rethinking rape politically. How did people in the past try to change the way we thought about rape and the way we prosecuted rape?
Rape originally was a crime of property. It was not had nothing to do really with the woman. You were offending her husband or her brother or her father or the males in her family because you had defaced their property. To come from that point to the point in the Arusha court, the United Nations Tribunal on Rwanda, where under Judge Navi Pillay, now the Human Rights Commissioner, there was a precedent set that rape in wartime is a crime against humanity. That's a hell of a span.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that you can have this historical shift, even under the question of wartime, but also in peacetime, is that our understandings of social hierarchy have changed. So that women once were in a patriarchal hierarchy in which their labor and their sexual labor as well was, in a sense, the property of father and then husband. Or for enslaved women, their bodies were the properties of their owners.
Right.
And so there were certain forms of hierarchical relationships in which rape could not occur, within marriage, for example, or under slavery.
Right.
But our history in the last several hundred years has been one of rejecting those kinds of social hierarchies. So it's part of a much larger historical process, but one that doesn't just happen automatically, one that people had to fight for.
You also show the how, and the how is so crucial, because my teeth begin to gnash uncontrollably when I hear the phrase, they gave women the vote, for example, or they gave the slaves freedom. Nobody gave anybody anything. These things were won, hard fought and hard won. And that is the real story of this book.
Yes, and I just want to acknowledge that for centuries, any woman who brought rape charges was acting against huge odds, and it was an act of resistance and a political act to do that, because you would be cross-examined about your character, and you had to show physical bodily signs that you had fought almost to the death, and there were individual acts of resistance throughout the history of trials for rape. But what I find is the beginning of people organizing to try to change the law and to change the practices, as I say, as a social movement, as groups with certain interests towards rights and full humanity, full citizenship. So yes, people organized, as I say, the suffrage movement, the social purity movement, the effort to raise the age of consent from the British common law, an American standard of 10 years old, that after 10, there was no question. You had to question consent. An 11-year-old could be called a consenting adult. So that movement to bring the age of consent up to 12 or 14 or 16 or 18, that was waged by primarily women's groups like the Women's Christian Temperance Union and some suffragists as well, at a time when women couldn't vote. But they lobbied and they petitioned and they got male allies, and they persuaded most state legislatures to raise the age of consent in the turn of the 20th century. I have to say, I have a chapter that talks about that social movement and the political efforts and the media efforts to try to change ideas about consent. But I also have a chapter about how those laws played out in court, and it's not necessarily a success story.
Right.
That is, judges continued to question, wasn't she really mature enough to have consented at 12 years old, or especially the racial double standards in which many of these laws to protect young women, whether they were anti-seduction laws or age of consent laws, really protected white women, while stereotypes about black girls and women continued to hold for decades.
The myth of so many of these things, persists with the most extraordinary tenacity. I mean, I remember when we were fighting, even in New York State, in the early days of this wave, for rape shield laws, so that the woman's past didn't come up on the witness stand, or fighting for the concept of marital rape, having to explain to people why there could be rape in marriage, or in terms of race. I remember civil libertarians saying, well, the women's movement shouldn't even raise rape because it's racist. And many of us who, like me, had come out of the civil rights movement saying, what? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? And they're saying, well, the specter in people's minds immediately is of a white woman and a black rapist man. And we kept pointing out the data, which was that when white women are raped, they are raped more often by white men. And when black men are raping, they are more often raping black women. But the facts never got ingested somehow against the myths.
I think that the history explains why civil libertarians felt that way. They had only begun, really, in the post-World War II period to get a handle on these legal lynchings or these false accusations or the lack of procedural rights for African American men accused of all kinds of crimes, including sexual assault. So they had this tool, which was, let's look at the character of the woman who's making the accusation, and they were hesitant to let go of that tool because there had been so much injustice.
Right.
And yet, as you point out, and as feminists pointed out at the time, the vast majority of sexual assaults are intraracial, not interracial.
Precisely.
And I think one of the things I realized in writing this book is that both the women's rights movement and the anti-lynching movement or racial justice movement, both of them were targeting the sexual privileges of white men.
Yes.
And that's a piece of the history that gets lost, which is that African American men and women were not just defending black men from the charge of rape. They were also insisting that white men be held responsible for their assaults on black women.
And so were white women holding
and that's what white women
same,
were doing too.
Exactly.
With the anti-seduction laws and the age of consent laws and the efforts to get on juries. So there was this common ground of naming white men's sexual privileges and trying to make the law fairer and therefore give greater protections to women of any race. But those two movements, really, during the period I studied, although they had this common ground, were not in alliance.
No.
Until the 1930s and after, really, it's still struggling. As you point out, even in the second wave feminist movement, questions of race and feminism, and were they at odds or would they be in alliance?
Precisely.
And we still struggle with that today.
The book is called Redefining Rape, Sexual Violence in the Era of Suffrage and Segregation. The author is Estelle Freedman, and we are grateful to you. It's Harvard University Press, and it's in the bookstores and online. And we're grateful to you for writing it and for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much.
We have to take a quick break here. I'm Robin Morgan, and this is Women's Media Center Live. When we return, we'll be talking with a woman who is generous with her resources, both material and even more so, her good brain and her great heart, all to try to heal our culture. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back. Our next guest is a member of the extended family of this program. In fact, she was the founding sponsor for Women's Media Center Live. And she's even more than that, the founder and CEO of Artemis Rising Foundation, which is dedicated to developing and promoting media, education, and healing projects that transform our culture. She's an entrepreneur, a social activist, a documentary filmmaker. It just goes on and on. But let Regina Scully speak for herself. Dear Regina, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, this is your home. You're coming home here because, I mean, we wouldn't exist without you. You're the founding sponsor, among the 112,000 other things that you do, as a social activist, as an entrepreneur, as a visionary. You're a movie producer with documentaries that have literally changed the landscape for women, like The Invisible War, about sexual rapes and assault in the military, misrepresentation, so many. How did you get into this? You were in marketing, a marketing executive, and how do all these things come together?
Well, first of all, Robin, I love being here, and I'm so proud of you. I love this show, and it is like being home. I feel like I'm among my sisters.
You are.
Proud. Thank you. And you're gracious. Thank you for your gracious words. But for me, I did start off my career in journalism, then found my way into marketing, consumer products, and then found my way back into storytelling through film, through documentary filmmaking. And I just find that since the media does create our culture, that one of the most powerful ways to talk to people of all ages is through the storytelling of filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And then I went in even deeper because I'm passionate about the fields of trauma recovery and people becoming whole and feeling better. I just see so many people that are suffering from a variety of things.
Yes.
And that really our pharmaceutical world can't cure.
Right.
And so it just has mental illness, depression, people who have really experienced things in their childhood or in their adulthood that they can't quite shake. And so how do we as a culture address this, our fellow human beings? How do we talk to each other in a way that we can understand each other and help each other feel better? And so filmmaking films is one of the ways I think that's so powerful that we can do that. And so the films I've chosen to help produce and back are all based on recovery, but broadly defined. Mm-hmm. My version of recovery is, do we come out of an experience for having seen it and heard it more whole, just
yes.
as a being? Whether it's a comedy and we've laughed our way through 2 hours,
right,
or whether it's a drama where we've been touched by something in our heart and our soul has been touched and we've been moved. So I always say that my films are films that change our DNA.
Mm-hmm. Nice, very nice. What is also beautiful to watch are the connections. I mean, you created the Athena Film Festival, which is at Barnard College annually. It's the first women's film festival focused on supporting women filmmakers. You can't believe it, but it was the absolute, icebreaker. And yes. I look around at all your activities and I see the connection. And it's like living proof that I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I wrote it at one point in somewhere that if I had to define one characteristic of patriarchy, it would be compartmentalization. Separate off by race, by age, by class, by national boundary. And if I had to define one characteristic of feminism, it would be connectivity. The energy lives in making the connections, and that's what women do, and that's what the women's movement does, and that is what everything that you do links to something that makes something else happen, including the work that you're doing now with neuroscience. So I hope you talk about that too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you again. And you're right. We see this in every single disciplinary effort, that when there's collaboration, when there's interdisciplinary efforts, we have the greatest gains. And we're seeing that in neuroscience especially. And what I'm very proud that my husband John and I are part of, the liftoff of the Princeton Neuroscience Institute, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking all of these interdisciplinary efforts, molecular biology, psychology, philosophy,
Wow.
chemistry, math, engineering. They know that it's in the research of neural activity involves all of these interdisciplinary efforts.
Yes.
They're looking at a single neuron, and then they're looking at the whole brain. Again, it's the interconnectivity of everything. And when we begin to start to understand the power of that, both on the micro level, of our brain, and then the macro level of our culture and society, that's where the miracles begin. And things like the Athena Film Festival. By the way, I'm the founding sponsor of that. It was created by Melissa Silverstein and Catherine Colbert and Deborah Spar at Barnard College. What I love what they're doing is they are seeking out all of this new material, this fantastic material by female directors and writers and artists, and they're showcasing it because, as you and I know, it's we're over half the population, so we know there's a huge pool of talent there that maybe hasn't been explored and highlighted as much as it will be now at this festival. So I'm very excited about it.
How did you come to your feminism?
I grew up with 3 brothers. So it's that, I grew up with a lot of male energy. I grew up an athlete. I was a swimmer my whole life. And I grew up learning that if I wanted a new pair of sneakers, I had to go out and buy them myself because, everyone had to earn their keep in my family. So I had a paper route at age 10. So I had a very strong, bright Italian mom and grandmother, and they greatly influenced me. They were my first 2 feminist role models.
More and more mothers are emerging. It's a pattern on this show that although they came of a generation where they might not have called it feminism, they were the ones who said to their daughters, you go for it, you do this.
Yes. No, I think, also we all need to be inspired. And I am very fortunate to have been in a generation where I had Robin Morgan, Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, Carol Jenkins, Pat Mitchell. I had you all that step above me, in front of me. So we were always standing on the shoulders of somebody else. Always.
We're
always. And I feel a profound obligation to acknowledge that generation and to support that generation because they're not done yet.
Oh,
Just
no.
because they're ahead of us doesn't mean they're done.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Are you, Robin?
Oh, hell no. I'm just getting started, honey.
I know you are.
I'm just getting started.
I know you are.
Now, listen, before we go, a couple of quick things. One, what are you working on now? Any films that we should... The Awakening will be out. Will still take a while to be finished, won't it?
Yes, they're working on Awakening. The biggest projects now, there's a vote right now in the Senate on the Military Justice Improvement Act that The Invisible War, just one of the films I'm most proud of, it was up for an Academy Award in February. It was the runner-up. It didn't win, but it's winning in our culture in that it's changing laws on Capitol Hill. It's changing medical treatment in the VA hospitals on trauma therapy.
It is a huge consciousness-raising tool. Huge.
Absolutely huge, and the votes this week, and you know what, no matter what happens, we're going to keep fighting it. Other films that I'm working on, Half the Sky was a beautiful series done. I'm working on a series on the positive aspects, the transformative power of trauma in healing on PBS on a show called Healing Quest.
Wow.
It'll be a 7-show series. It will be this spring. It's going to be just fantastic, really giving people healing tools and information on the power of the transformative power of trauma, how it's really a portal of transformation.
Brilliant.
Basically pain to power, really beautiful. Another film we're working on is one called Fed Up that I'm doing with Katie Cork and Lori David, and that's on really the food systems in our culture and how that plays such an important part of what we're doing.
But I have one last question which has 2 parts to it. If you had to say, so far in what is yet to be a long and even more fruitful life, but so far, what would you say has been your greatest regret, and what would you say is your greatest pride?
Oh, wow, that's big.
Listen, I mean, even Amanpour took time over that one.
Okay, those are 2 very important questions. My only regret is wasting any energy on negative thought. For me, everything, the body, everything follows the mind. It goes back to our brain conversation.
Yes.
And the power of our thoughts and our words. So my only regret is that having wasted ever a thought or word on anything negative. And my greatest pride at this moment in time is the work that I'm doing in film, and how I really believe that that spending time and energy on media in our culture that can transform our culture for the positive is affecting people exponentially. And I'm very proud of that. When we have films like, we have one coming out, Anita, Truth to Power.
Yes.
20-year retrospective on Anita Hill. Alice Walker, Beauty and Truth. We're launching it this weekend. Boyhood Shadows is another film, early film that I did.
Yes, that's the one about male adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Absolutely, and it happened to someone in my family, which was really the launch of my whole career into filmmaking. That's how I saw the power of filmmaking, helping people to heal, giving a voice to those, who needed to express what's happened to them. And then in doing so, other people could heal as well. So for me, the transformative power of the media, and this is probably my greatest joy.
Well, that's a pretty good joy. Thank you for everything you do and everything you are, and for being with us on Women's Media Center Live, and for being a board member of Women's Media Center, and for just also being you and the sweetness that's you.
Thank you, Robin. Those words mean a lot to me. You're an inspiration to me and so many others. Never stop.
Never stop. I won't if you won't.
We're right behind you every step of the way.
Even arm in arm, I say.
Arm in arm. I like that even better.
Next, let's practice some verbal karate. This is an excerpt from Unspinning the Spin by Rosalie Maggio, the wonderful book on words that will be the first publication of the Women's Media Center Press, out next spring. Military language. If you collect euphemisms, the best place to find them is in military language. For example, collateral damage, dead civilians and destroyed civilian infrastructure. Traumatic amputation, an arm or leg blown off. To neutralize, assassinate. Ordnance, bombs. Silos, where we keep nuclear missiles. Farms, where we keep our silos. The part of the submarine where 24 multiple warhead nuclear missiles are lined up ready for launching is called the Christmas Tree Farm. The Department of Defense, that used to be the Department of War, should probably be called nowadays the Department of Offense. Visits and sorties, bombing raids. Servicing the target, killing. Disinformation, lies. Operational exhaustion, shell-shocked. Soft target, unarmored or undefended target. Administered areas, captured lands. Extrajudicial execution, murder. Plausible deniability, lies that just might get by. And terms that sound almost cozy, mopping up, skirmish, clearing the area, and mission. Our own everyday language is shot through with the metaphors of war. We arm ourselves with information if we're not bombarded with it first. We take sides in the battle of the sexes. We work in the trenches or the front lines. We combat racism and sexism. Poverty and injustice are the enemy. In hundreds of ways, our language reveals a war mindset, and being aware of it is probably an important step in working for global peace. We have to take a break again, but when I come back, I'll be joined by Gloria Steinem, and Gloria and I will discuss our transit from a pajama party to the East Room at the White House. Curious? Well, you better come back in just a minute.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
And we're back again. On November 20th of this year, my dear friend of many years and sister and colleague and co-founder of the Women's Media Center, Gloria Steinem, received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor that this country can bestow. It began under the Kennedy years, and it has persisted to this day. And we thought it would be fun to discuss how that really felt and what went on behind the scenes. And I can tell what went on in front of the scenes because I went down to Washington and the White House to be there for her and with her. Welcome back to Women's Media Center Live.
It's wonderful to be here and with such good news to report.
Yes, isn't it nice for a change? We won one.
I think this may be a first.
I know.
We'll get to complaining later, all right, but for the moment, they're celebrating.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor.
It is the highest, and first, obviously, it's for an entire movement in this case, but also, since I researched it, I discovered that its value has to do with the president who gives it to you, and so I'm very grateful that it came from President Obama because Dick Cheney got it, and Henry Hyde got it, whose legislation has probably damaged more women than any other single piece of legislation.
Well, that induces humility, doesn't it?
Yes, right. So if I'm feeling uppity at all, I can always remind myself of that.
It was started by John Kennedy, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, because he wanted a medal that was for waging peace, you might say, rather than waging war. All the medals given out by the White House otherwise had to do with the military, and this was for civilians, for citizens.
When did you first learn, and how did you learn? And then tell what happened when we got to Washington. Well,
I learned because the White House called me, and I confess that the first thing I said was, "Are you sure?" However, it's also true that the great and generous Wilma Mankiller, a former chief of the Cherokee Nation, no longer with us, I'm sorry to say, had, I know, written letters on my behalf at my 60th birthday, which means it was almost 20 years ago, because I had accompanied her to get her Medal of Freedom. But by now I had forgotten that, and indeed I don't know if that was related to this event or not. But I had witnessed this ceremony before and seen how wonderful it was.
So there we all came, a group of close friends. You're allowed a few, and I was delighted to be among them.
Yes, Robin. This is such a movement event. I can't possibly imagine the event going forward without you. So I'm lucky to have you as a friend in addition to a movement hero. And there was Suzanne Levine and Joanne Edgar as well, and Amy Richards came. And it was really a great occasion.
It's chosen family
to share.
Yes,
absolutely.
And for me, I'm not sure whether. Well, I think it was better, than even meeting the president. Was the pajama party that we had, because we took adjoining rooms in the hotel, and so we were able to go back and forth and gossip in our pajamas and share scones and tea the morning of the event.
Yes, well, you were all peacefully laughing and carrying on, while I am terrified running around trying to get ready, since I had to be there a couple of hours earlier. The security is really daunting, and once you get inside this peaceful circle of the White House, you realize how isolated it is by the security, because there were foxes on the lawn.
Yeah, it really is like a bubble.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I can imagine it's hard to stay hooked into reality because of that.
Yeah. So you went ahead of us, and what happened when you got there?
Well, I was actually the first person there, so I had coffee and received people as they arrived, and the other awardees included Sally Ride's partner and Bayard Rustin's partner, since they were receiving it posthumously, and I think it might have been the first Freedom Medal that was given to partners.
I think it must have been, yeah. Those were very moving moments.
Yes, no, it was great. And Reverend C.T. Vivian and Arturo Sandoval, a great musician who was a protege and friend of Dizzy Gillespie, and who actually performed, and of course Bill Clinton and Oprah Winfrey, and Ernie Banks and Ben Bradley, the former editor of the Washington Post.
And Loretta Lynn.
And Loretta Lynn, yes. So
and Pat Wald, the judge, Pat Wald.
Yes, so it was a very varied group. We had photographs taken with the president and the first lady before the ceremony began, and also one of my guests was Franklin Thomas, former president of the Ford Foundation, and that I wanted to be sure that the president knew, because it was possible that Frank was the only person there who had known the president's mother. They worked together at the Ford Foundation.
You got to tell him that.
I got to tell him that, yes. And then we got to commiserate about insurance companies, because I said to him, of course, that's what killed the Equal Rights Amendment. And he immediately knew why, because the actuarial tables are sex segregated, and they didn't want to have to stop doing that.
That's right.
So the very small degree to which now they will have to, thanks to Obamacare, is also a bone of contention even now.
Sure.
So then there's much walking around in the. There are three rooms together: the blue room, the green room, and the red room. People who remember Jackie Kennedy giving a tour of the White House will remember a completely nonplussed interviewer saying, "Oh, the room is blue," and Jackie saying, "Yes, it's the blue room." Right.
Of course, we forget it's an 18th century house, and the rooms are fairly small.
Yes.
I mean, people think the East Room is, massive, and it simply isn't. It's a regular size room. No,
they're really the size. There are three in a row, each one a salon, a kind of size of a normal living room.
That's right.
And then the actual ceremony, which is done in what I imagine was a ballroom.
No, the East Room. They said the East Room. Yeah.
Right, but wasn't it used as a ballroom? I'm not sure. But anyway, with huge standing portraits of George and Martha looking down.
Yes, exactly. Right. But it's not what we would think of as a hotel ballroom today. It still was small for our standards.
Yes.
Well, we were sitting there and noticing everyone around, Hillary and Chelsea in one front row, the Kennedys in another front row, because it was also the anniversary of the assassination, and the vice president came in. And Steven Spielberg sitting with the head of NASA, I presume to honor Sally Ride, and John Lewis to honor Bayard Rustin, and we were waiting for you, and then in you came.
Yes, we walked in a procession, and we were all sitting in those kind of ballroom little gold chairs on a platform behind the president, who was in the center, and he gave a speech in which he mentioned each one of us. And then for the award of the medal itself, there was a military spokesperson reading each of the citations. Then we walked toward the president, and he put the medal around our necks, which had snaps on the back, which he did very well. And I thought to myself, that's why he's a good father. You can see.
only you would make this connection. All right, we're gonna pause here for just a minute, and then we'll go on to the reception and the dinner later on. We have to take a short break here on Women's Media Center Live, where I am still Robin Morgan, and we'll be back in just a moment with more Gloria Steinem.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
And here we are back again with Gloria Steinem talking about just, how it is to be hanging at the White House and later on after the medal ceremony at the Smithsonian Institution. So, I remember that you were enormously relieved, and I thought it was a great idea, too, that you didn't have to give a speech. They don't let you speak, in fact. And it's nice for a change, because usually when they give one an award, one has to do a free speech that accompanies it.
Yes, it's very. I mean, I can imagine that with 16 of us, 2 of whom are Bill Clinton and Oprah, and wouldn't be possible. But it was a great relief, and really. I mean, I was still worried, of course, about tripping, falling down, or doing something else. But at least it's kind of pure reward.
Yeah, it was lovely.
And it's. I wasn't prepared actually for how pleasurable it was. It was just sort of you sort of don't know what to do with yourself. It's so pleasurable.
You looked genuinely elated, and you were the only person up there, I must say, who listened intently to all of the data about the other awardees. Other people's attention wandered. And if you looked at Bill Clinton, it was hilarious because he was ready to explode from not speaking.
Well, I couldn't see him. I was actually sitting in the back row. However, Oprah and I could high five before I got the medal.
Yes, we saw that.
Right.
That was lovely. That was just lovely. And so then there was the reception afterward, and then we repaired all of us to the Women's Media Center, where we had our own special reception for you. And then we went back to New York, and you went to the dinner. So
yes, the dinner was at the Smithsonian in a huge hall with a long table in front of the stage with each of the awardees and our guest, our partner. And the most extraordinary thing about it was that Arturo Sandoval performed. I mean, I've never seen him perform live before, but he did such things as a kind of jazz composition in which he not only played the trumpet in a way you've never heard before, but also became each instrument.
Wow!
The bass viol, the sax, while scatting.
Wow!
Sort of at the same. It's very hard to express, but it was incredible. And then he played the piano, an enormous, beautiful grand piano there with perfect acoustics, which was like a kind of symphony, a classical symphony, in which every once in a while you would hear the melody of a blues or jazz song. It was just extraordinary. And I feel it's okay to say, since the Clintons are so focused upon in the negative, that I was sitting next to Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton was sitting on the other side of her. And during this jazz, which of course he adores, he reached over and they were holding hands. So, it was interesting because I've always assumed, as a complete outsider, of course, that this is one of the best marriages because they're interested in each other, they respect each other equally, in politically and every other way. And they're never given credit for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know that many old married couples who have this kind of partnership and respect between them.
Right.
So I hope they don't mind my sharing the fact that they were holding hands.
I think it's quite lovely. She once said, when she was asked why did you stay after the Lewinsky situation, her response was, well, we began a conversation years ago, and I'm just not finished yet. Which itself was very interesting.
I was thinking about, I, as a pretty old person, much of my adult life, I've been so at war with our policies that I haven't been able to enter the White House.
Yes, me too.
It isn't as if we don't have ongoing conversations and disagreements with this administration. We do. But it feels at least possible to enter and to have those conversations.
Yes, yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I met him, I hadn't prepared anything for him. I had been very fixated on Hillary, and so I suddenly thought, oh my God, well, there's the president, and I got nothing. And I heard myself say in a sort of protective tone, which is funny because I am a quarter of his height. I heard myself say, Mr. President, don't let the bastards get you down.
And I think he could appreciate that.
Well, he burst out laughing, and he seemed for a moment flustered. He said, well, I won't. I mean, I haven't. I mean, I don't. I mean, but I won't all over again. And I realized that it was because of the fact that there was this short little old lady, as it were, looked up at him and said, don't let the bastards get you down, Mr. President.
It probably delighted him. And also, I remember you're saying that when you were standing next to Michelle Obama, the First Lady, to have a photograph taken, you commented on your height, and she took her shoe off in solidarity.
Yes, she did, which I might add didn't help a bit because she still loomed over me, and she's absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, much, much lovelier in person than she photographs, and she photographs well, too. But
yeah, I think I was looking at her in the evening, because she is so tall and strong and beautiful.
Yes.
That she looks like women should look after the revolution.
Exactly. Well, we're incredibly proud of you, and I'm going to close by asking you, because I realize I've never asked you this in private or in public, and I usually ask certain guests this double question. What, looking back, and for that matter forward, would you say is your greatest regret, and what would you say is your greatest pride? This is an occasion when I can actually ask that.
My greatest regret has to do with time. It's not simply about time, but because I feel I have often done over again things I already knew how to do because they were helpful or because it made sense at the moment. Instead of striving to do something new and different. And at my advanced age, since I don't have that much time left, I mean, I do plan to live to be 100, but that still is only 20 years. I really am going to try to do what I haven't done. I mean, I've always tried to apply a test, which is if someone else can do this, then I shouldn't.
Right.
But I haven't been so good about it, so I'm going to try to be better. And what am I most proud of? I think I'm most proud of being part of a community with a vision of a hopeful future. So that I somehow now, thanks to this community, am able to see a world that is circular, not hierarchical, because I'm in that kind of community. So I'm proud of my contribution to it, and I'm proud of us. I'm proud of it.
Oh, I love you. I really do so much, and I'm proud of you.
No, Robin, listen, I wouldn't be me. Isn't there some great poetic couplet that says this? I wouldn't be me if you weren't you.
I don't I don't know, but if there isn't, we
there should be.
We just made it up. And I'm very grateful that you shared with the listeners of Women's Media Center Live the backstory and the backstage of receiving the medal. And but the more important than the medal comes the love of people listening to this and mine. Just huge,
thank you,
huge amounts.
And thank you for giving me a place to share it, because this medal really is a movement medal. And I kept thinking, where is Shirley? Where is Bella? Where is Patsy Mink?
Yeah.
So at least we can share it this way.
We have shared it this way. Love you and thank you.
Love you. Thank you.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. And Fighting Words brings us back yet again to Saudi Arabia. I'm getting pissed off at having to come back to Saudi Arabia again and again and again. I bet you are too. But we have to stick with it as long as the women stick with it. In this case, two of Saudi Arabia's best-known female advocates for lifting the ban on women driving have been detained, this was Friday last, after being caught behind the wheel in Riyadh, the country's capital. Aziza al-Youssef, who was driving the car, and her friend and passenger Iman al-Nafjan were pulled over and spent a few hours at a police station in Riyadh until being released into the custody of their respective husbands, who are, you will remember, their male guardians. Al-Nafjan, who is one of Saudi Arabia's most prominent bloggers, and she also was one of the organizers of the women's driving campaign, said that she had decided to go for a drive with al-Youssef deliberately to attract more attention to the cause. She said to CNN, "We were looking for the police. We drove by the police station on purpose," and she added that she welcomed the detention. Al-Nafjan, who tweets as Saudi Woman, all one word, says that she's grown tired of waiting for the government to allow women to drive. She's driven before, and she drove that on Friday, and she says she wasn't deliberately looking to be detained. On the other hand, it's good for the cause, she said, because you keep the issue in the mind of people. However, some people might understand wrongly that we're confronting the government, and that might slow the process. Well, I have news for you, sister. You are confronting the government, and I say hip hip hooray to you for doing so. Anyway, if you have a moment, and if you're on Twitter, it would be nice if you tweeted a tweet to @SaudiWoman, SaudiWoman, and just gave a little encouragement and rah-rah, and you know, we're with you and all that sort of thing, because it's hard, and they're isolated, and they keep popping up intrepidly, and that's amazing. And they want to keep the issue in the mind of people, so let's let them know that they're on our mind. And then we maybe won't have to come back to Saudi Arabia always. This is an item that I usually put in the surrealism corner because Saudi Arabia fits there so perfectly. But this week I was just so damn pissed off that I put it in fighting words. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS Radio WJFK 1580 AM or visiting us at WMCLive.com for this and any of our previous episodes. Be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams Chancellor, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week when my guests will be a Christian Palestinian novelist, a British survivor of sexual enslavement and writer, and a Chinese-American choreographer and multimedia artist, plus the woman who is going to transform women's reproductive health clinics. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio and WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.